Good afternoon, everyone, from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where several hundred have gathered over the past several days at the At-Risk Youth National Forum. This is Sam Drew with the National Dropout Prevention Center, and I'm here with my co-host and colleague, Marty Duckenfield, also with the center. And we welcome all of you to this monthly radio webcast brought to you by the National Dropout Prevention Center at Clemson University in partnership with Clemson Radio Productions and with the generous support of Penn Foster. And Marty, this broadcast is a very different experience for us.
Oh, it sure is, but it's going to be as much fun as it ever is. Hello to all our listeners out there for Solutions to the Dropout Crisis. As Sam has said, we are broadcasting live from Myrtle Beach at the conference here, and we have with us today a live studio audience who are participants at the forum. We've been meeting with them prior to the broadcast, and I can tell you there's some excitement in the air here. We're so pleased to have both our on-site as well as our loyal listeners from afar join us today, as always, and we welcome the new listeners to the program, too. Today, with our special guest here at Myrtle Beach joining us, a truly important and outstanding program is planned for you today. So we're ready to get started. First of all, I would like to remind our listeners of the materials provided on the website for today's program. First, there's the slide presentation, which is in fact a PowerPoint to support today's discussion. Have that open and ready. Secondly, the first item under the resources is a handout, which is based upon the PowerPoint so participants can take notes. There are some excellent articles by our guest, Stephanie Hirsh, and her colleague, Hayes Mizell, who is in our studio audience today. A very good resource is the video from the National Staff Development Council, Stephanie, about the new definition for professional development. Terrific video, which is on there, linked right for you. And of course, that entire website itself for the National Staff Development Council is listed. So Sam, it looks like, as usual, there's quite a lot of information here for our listeners to turn to at the end of the program.
The resources that we append to each of these programs are really a highlight of the program, and the resources listed for this month's program are particularly good. Really terrific material. Sometimes as you visit different websites there, you'll find resources embedded in resources. So take time to dig into that material. It's a very good way to enhance and expand the information that you get directly here today.
Well, as always, listeners, we invite you to be an active part of the program today. And although we do have a live studio audience, we would love to have lots of listeners and participants here engaging with Stephanie on this important topic. So for those of you who are out there, we have two ways you can connect to us. First, because this is a radio call-in show, we encourage you to call in your questions for our guest. We have a toll-free number. It's 888-539-8859. And for those calling from outside the U.S., and actually we have a Canadian representative here today, so maybe some of your colleagues, Barbara, are going to call in from Canada. But the number for outside the U.S. would be 864-656-4549. You may begin calling now or anytime during the program. We'll put you on hold for a few minutes, but we'll try to get to as many of your questions or comments as we can during the broadcast. We also accept email questions sent to our email address, which is ndpc@clemson.edu. And if you put the word solutions in the subject line, I'll be able to spot it right away. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as well. So we're looking forward to all of your questions today. And in the audience, we're going to do something special. Terry Cash, one of our co-hosts, will be roving around with a microphone. And so our audience here knows that they can contact Terry and get their questions to him. So we're looking forward to all the questions today.
Our topic this month is professional development, and who better to turn to than the National Staff Development Council, whose purpose it is that every educator engage in effective professional learning every day so every student achieves. We're honored to have with us and very pleased to have with us on this Solutions broadcast Dr. Stephanie Hirsh, who serves as Executive Director of the National Staff Development Council. Stephanie, we're delighted to have you
Thank you for inviting me.
Particularly for coming down in person. We know the trials and tribulations of travel these days from various parts of the country with the snow. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. Having been a teacher and a school administrator for many years and witnessed, as many of you in this room have, bad professional development, if we can say that. And I would further define that by saying most of us that have had any experience with professional development as teachers, as leaders in the school, and I know there are exceptions to the rule. I've occasionally had very good professional development, but most of it is very disjointed. There's really not enough time to do it. It's tacked on to the beginning of the year or the end of the year because the law says we have to have certain number of days of professional development and so on and so forth. So today we want to focus on this topic and some real cutting-edge work, I think, that is being done to show us how to do professional development right. So that's another reason that we're pleased to have Stephanie here with us to talk about the new definition of professional development and to elaborate on what that definition really means and how we get the word out and really ingrain this kind of effective professional development in our schools. So before we begin that, let me just remind you again to be sure to call us with your questions. Our listening audience are participants in this Solutions broadcast, and we like to hear from you. Stephanie would like to hear from you, so write in by email, as Marty said, and gave you the email address, or call us, and once again, the number, toll-free, is 888-539-8859. If you're calling from outside of the U.S., I'm sorry it's not toll-free, but we'd still like to hear from you. It's 864-656-4549. Stephanie, let's turn now to the work being done by the Staff Development Council and this new definition of professional development.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you those in the room who stayed for the conversation and those on the phone. This is a unique opportunity for me as well, and as a staff developer at heart, you can imagine that it's somewhat challenging to be tied to a chair and to pay attention to who's on the phone and who's in the room and to announce things like when we're going to switch the slide and things like that. So we'll see how I manage all of that. But if we were in a staff development session right now, we'd probably be sitting around tables. I'd have all of you move, who are the people in the room move, and I hope the people on the phone and listening to the radio are with colleagues so that there's an opportunity for you to talk about the ideas that we'll discuss during the course of the next hour. I've got several objectives planned for the time that we have together, so let's review those, and those are on the next slide. First one is to talk about the new vision for professional learning as well as the new definition. The second one is to talk about the standards for professional development and how they can help you with professional development planning. The third one is to talk about strategies that you might consider to promote more effective professional development, no matter the context in which you work. And then the last one is to share with you some additional resources that you can use to continue this conversation with your colleagues. Now, I recognize everyone in this room has an expertise in dropout, in some area of dropout prevention. So I was thinking about the fact I'm going to be talking to people on the phone with an interest in that area, with an expertise in that area, people in the room, and here I am coming into the room and with my expertise, my passion in the area of professional development, and how do we connect to each other. And what I want to suggest to you is that with everything that you know in the field of dropout prevention, I'm confident one of the things that you're trying to accomplish is to make sure that what you know, the best practices you know, regularly spread classroom to classroom, school to school, and district to district. And what I want you to consider is the fact that truly the only proven way we have of spreading knowledge and practice is through high-quality, effective professional learning. And so for the next hour, I want everyone to put on their professional development hat and to think about the work that you do, the relationships that you build with others, the educators who you serve, the educators who you try and influence, and how you can use what the strategies and the information I'm going to share with you about professional development to help you get the results that you seek. So you've already heard a little bit about NSDC's purpose statement. That's on the next page. And I'm going to ask you also to consider if this purpose was defined part of the purpose for your work, how would it help you accomplish the goals that you're trying to help schools accomplish as well? We at NSDC affectionately refer to our purpose statement as E to the 6, because there's 6 E words there, right? And we're going to talk about all those E words, and those E words basically are the way that you can assess the professional development either that you experience or you plan in terms of its effectiveness, and I'll refer to those throughout the next hour that we're together. So let's look at what we mean by effective professional learning, and I want to talk about 3 key phrases and just say a little bit about each one of them, and then give you an opportunity to ask questions about different aspects of designing effective professional learning. So the first one is results-driven, the second one is standards-based, and the third one is job-embedded. So let's talk about what we mean by results-driven, and we'll go to that slide. When we talk about planning for results-driven professional learning, the first thing we need to think about is we need to know what is it that our students need to know and be able to do. Now, think about how professional development has been planned in the past. Think about the ineffective professional development that many people have experienced. Beginning with what the students need to know and be able to do doesn't mean beginning with a needs assessment of the educators. What do they want? It also doesn't mean looking in a district catalog or writing a catalog of courses and opportunities that people complete in order to get staff development credit. It truly means what it says there, that effective professional learning begins with determining what is it the students need to be successful. From there, the second question is, then, if this is what the students need, what are the knowledge and skills that the educators need in order to ensure student success? Because the reason the students aren't achieving the success is because of this gap between what the students need and the knowledge and skills of the teachers and the other educators who are serving them. So then we plan professional development. After we've identified the knowledge and skills the educators need, we plan the professional development to help the educators acquire the knowledge and skills. It's basically that simple, and I'm not going to say most. I'm going to say a lot of professional learning today, because I believe we are really improving in this arena. A lot of professional learning reverses that, and it's planned on the assumption that ultimately we will serve students, and what we want to do is we want to be more deliberate. We want to start by thinking about what do the students need in order to be successful, and what do we need to learn in order to help them. Now, the second part of this is about the standards. And I know we have a number of people in the room from South Carolina and North Carolina, and I know we have a number of people on the phone as well from across the country. And you might want to look up and find out if you are in one of the 40 states who have adopted standards for professional learning. South Carolina and North Carolina, both being states that have adopted the standards. I'm curious, I know I've got people on the phone and you can't raise your hands, but for those of you in the room, how many of you are familiar with NSDC standards for professional development? Put your hands up high, okay. Well, this is nice. It's an opportunity to introduce you to something new. What you're looking at here, and I'm sorry, we need to go to the next slide. Okay, we're looking at the framework for professional development planning in terms of the standards. The standards talk about the importance of thinking about content, process, and context when we plan professional development. If we want to ensure the professional development we plan has the impact we intended to have on teachers and students, we need to simultaneously pay attention on all three levels. It's called the nested organizer. And when we miss one of those parts of that organizer, then we basically have ineffective professional development. So for just a moment, think in your head about a professional development experience that you had some real hope for, that you thought potentially this professional development was really going to make a difference in the lives of teachers and ultimately in the lives of students. And it didn't. The hope wasn't realized, the results weren't achieved. So when I walk you through the content process and context organizer and what each part means, be thinking about which of those sections was missed in the planning and or delivery of the professional development that you're thinking about in your head. For me, in my case, years ago I was a staff development director in a school district, and we implemented a program, some of you may remember this program, called Talents Unlimited. And we put a lot of pieces in place that we thought very well, and we missed some really important places, and I'll tell you where that is as I walk you through the organizer. How many of you, and those of you on the phone, you can nod, how many of you are familiar with the professional development program called TESSA, Teacher Expectation, Student Achievement? Folks in the room, folks on the phone, some of you are nodding. What you know about TESSA is the content is solid. It's about helping teachers develop high expectations and demonstrate those high expectations in classrooms. The process is solid. The process is training and follow-up and coaching and classroom-based support. And the context, you put TESSA in a school that still sorts and labels students, and then you ask, why doesn't TESSA get results? It's an example of strong content, strong process, and weak context. And so the high-quality PD doesn't produce the results it's intended to produce. So think about your own experience, think about what you plan, think about how the organizer will be helpful. And we're just going to walk through the three pieces, but we're going to do it very quickly. And I actually, this is the first time I've prepared this in this way to share with people, and so hopefully those of you on the phone and in the room will give me some feedback in terms of whether these questions are helpful to you. I want to tell you, on the NSDC website, you can read everything you could possibly want to read about each one of these standards. We have the statement of the standard, we have resources, we have articles, we have tools, and it's all free. So you just go to the website and you click on standards and it's all there. So let me just touch on them. First of all, the inner box, that's the content box, so we're on the slide that has content on the top of it. And we've organized content in three areas around equity, teaching quality, and family involvement. And as I met several people at the conference, many of you described your work was with families. Others of you are in central administration, and your work is with instruction. And others of you I met, you work directly with the students, and your work is in the equity arena. So when we plan professional development, we're planning it in one of those content areas. What I tried to do for you was give you a key question that would help you in planning professional development in relationship to that particular standard. This is just one question that might help you plan. You could probably draw others from reading that rationale. The next slide is just to remind you of the importance of one of the standards, and I like cartoons, and yes, I have permission to use these. So this one's a reminder of the standard around family involvement, because of course what we want our parents, all parents, saying to remind their children of the value that they place on education. And for every section of the organizer, I also have a quote to help you remember the importance of that quote. So this quote for this particular section is, not all content is created equal. Let me tell you a quick story. You introduced the Distinguished Senior Fellow for NSDC, Hayes Mizell, who's with us in the audience today. And in, I think it was 1996, Hayes funded a study that NSDC led to look at professional development initiatives in the middle grades. And we wanted to find out how many professional development programs that were being marketed to schools could demonstrate evidence of impact in terms of changing teacher practice and student learning. And we identified 496 different PD programs for middle school teachers. Okay, now think to yourself for a moment. Of those 496 programs, how many do you think could produce for us evidence of impact on teachers and students? 21. So think about all the different programs that are sold to schools today, promising results that really don't have any of the evidence to support what they're promising. And so that's why we have this quote, not all content is created equal. In terms of process, there are 6 process standards. The first ones, the questions there address the data in terms of planning as well as making sure that you're collecting data for purposes of evaluation. And I've got a cartoon there for you as well. You can never have too much data. That should be the next slide. And then the next 3 process standards address, and we'll go to the next slide, address the design of professional development. So how do we address individual adult learning needs? How do we take advantage of the collaborative learning that we want to occur within schools? And how do we address career stages of adults when we design for professional learning? So in terms of process, we do have a cartoon. We know on occasion that there are occasions when we need to use substitutes in schools as one of the ways that we release teachers for time for collaborative learning or time to attend a workshop outside the school. We don't want that to happen too frequently, but in the case that it does, we sure like our substitute teacher to really be well prepared to enter in the classroom. And our quote for the process standards is, training without follow-up is malpractice. Training without follow-up is malpractice. Let me give you a statistic related to that quote. If we send a teacher to a workshop, or if we ourselves go to a one-shot workshop one day, and we go back into our workplace, how much of what we hear at that workshop do you think we're actually able to translate into practice? The average person takes back 10% of what they heard at that one-shot workshop. If there's no accountability for implementation and no support for follow-up, there's 10% that will be implemented. So when people say to me, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough resources, the first thing I ask them to do is go back and evaluate their program, their offerings in terms of how much their district is offering that could be characterized as a one-shot workshop. So the last group of standards are based around the context of the organization. And these are very critical. If these aren't in place, just like in my TESSA example, then you will not get the results you intended through professional learning. And I know you're probably familiar with the importance of learning communities, leadership, and resources to professional development. So, and I chose a cartoon here because it's key that leaders, and I assume there are that the individuals attending this conference and listening on the phone are the leaders, and so it's important to practice what we preach. So I thought you might get a kick out of my cartoon for this to represent the importance of leadership. So let me pause and see if there are questions about the first 2 parts of the definition, results-driven and standards-based.
Right. I think this is an opportunity for Terry to capture some of the questions in our group here, and Terry's got the roving mic, so indicate to Terry if you've got a question for Stephanie now.
Any questions?
Terry always has a question himself. I can remember some experiences. This
Would you
will
give
be
your
good.
name and where you're from?
Okay.
I'm Gail McGrain, and I'm from Forest Lake, Minnesota. And my question is taken from the resource section on the NDPC website. There's a blog entry from Hayes Mizell, and he writes, professional development must be inclusive, constant, deep, and productive. I don't want to make any assumptions about what those mean. Could you speak to each one of those briefly? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Do you want to repeat the 4 key words that you said? And we have Hayes in the room, so we may even give him the opportunity to respond as well.
Inclusive, constant, deep, and productive.
Okay. And in just a minute, we're going to look at the new definition for professional learning, and I think you're going to see all of that embedded in there. So very quickly, let me just respond to some of those words, and maybe we can invite Hayes if he wants to say something as well, since the author of the blog is in the room. But in terms of inclusive, one of the things we've learned through our partnership with the teachers' organizations, NEA and AFT, is it's important that the professional development, that individuals who are impacted by professional development are part of the PD planning process. So individuals don't go off, examine data, and determine what we need, but that everybody is at the table in planning it together. So in the new definition of professional learning, every teacher is a member of a learning team, and learning teams examine data about their students, and then learning teams together decide what are their learning priorities for the educators at the table. So I think that's one definition for inclusive. Constant is that it relates back to the NSDC purpose, that we are learning every day. And it is not fragmented learning where today I'm off to see a math workshop and next week I'm off for an English language curriculum session, but that this is about continuous improvement, and there's a cycle, and you'll see that in the definition as well, that defines the constancy of our learning. And it's constantly going back to the classroom because we're testing what we're learning on our students in terms of does it really help them be more effective. Deep, too much one shot is not deep. Deep means that we have an opportunity to develop deep content knowledge. Sometimes we can do that during the course of the year working with our colleagues, but there are other times when it's really important to go deep in longer term learning opportunities, which may be through taking courses in a particular subject area. So, it's not that learning with our colleagues is the only kind of professional learning that meets a definition. It needs to be the core and the focus and the organizer for additional professional learning. And productive means we measure it in terms of how it impacts our practice and how it impacts our students. Hayes, do you want to add something?
Certainly you do.
No, Stephanie, you got it. I think that's exactly right. Those words are just shorthand for the key elements that are included in NSDC's purpose.
I think we're good to move on.
Okay.
If there's any others, you have to really let Terry know. If not, Stephanie, why don't
That's
we
great.
keep going?
Because I'd love to be able to tell you now about the definition of job embedded, or what are we saying? What does job embedded look like today? And to share with you NSDC's definition. We've been working on this for 3 years, and we're very excited about this work. And I'm going to invite everybody who's listening to the show, as well as everybody in the room, to help us make this definition the definition on a national level. Let me tell you what that means. This definition, many of you probably know that in the current federal law, there is a definition of professional learning that we sometimes refer to it as the laundry list of opportunity. In fact, you can spend any of your Title II dollars on anything that's in that list. And what we are trying to do through our work at NSDC is focus Title II dollars on professional development that is much more meaningful in terms of changing the lives of teachers and students, and not make it the laundry list, or not make our money solely go to what we could affectionately refer to as adult pull-out programs. So we've been working on changing the definition, and if we're successful in changing it, it will become part of a new definition for professional learning in ESEA. And you have the definition in the handout, you have it on the website, and I'm going to walk you through the parts of it that we're most excited about. Last year, the definition was introduced in Senate Bill 1979.
Stephanie, I'm sorry to interrupt your chain of thought on that, but With respect to changing the definition within ESEA, what's an approximate timeline for that?
Okay.
And I ask that in this context. There is significant federal dollars coming to districts in the next few months in Race to the Top funds and school improvement grant funds. Would changes in ESEA and the definition of professional development in ESEA then be too late to impact those, or do you still see some impact in those?
That's a great
sources?
question too, because when the states were in meetings with the department, and you know how the department went around the country and helped people think about how they were going to write their Race to the Top grants. So in several of the meetings, the question was raised, what do you mean by professional development in our Race to the Top application? And at least in 2 different sites, the Department of Ed officials commented that just go find NSDC's definition.
Good.
So we felt really good about that.
Yeah, that's
so
terrific.
The ESEA reauthorization may not happen until early next fall, but there are some steps we need to take now in order to ensure that the definition transition takes place and that they're ready for it. In the draft, in fact, in the draft legislation that was written by Representative Miller, who's chair of the department, they didn't put in a definition of professional development. They said to be introduced later, and we've been told it's because they knew NSDC was working on it and they would just slide in the NSDC definition. We have one state that's already adopted the definition. You know, federal dollars are going to impact so much PD. What really impacts PD is what happens at the local level, and some of you in this room said what really impacts PD is what happens at the school. So even if the federal government adopts it, you know, we're not so blind to think that, okay, that's going to change PD. So what we want this to be is a great resource for everybody in the room to take back and begin a conversation about, how do we judge the professional development that occurs within our school and our system in relationship to this definition? And by the way, it might be adopted at the state or federal level, but we're not going to wait. We know this is more powerful than anything we've been able to provide in the past. We've had state adoptions, like I said, Alabama, and there's the first school district in California, I think it was Santee School District, adopted the definition. We had the New Jersey Education Association adopt the definition. We've got partners on all sides on the definition, so we're excited. So what are the critical elements? The first slide, I'm just going to highlight some words for you. Let's go back one slide. So the first thing that you recognize in the definition is this whole notion that it fosters collective responsibility, because we believe that a student's success should not be determined by the single classroom the student is assigned at the beginning of the year, but it should be determined by all of the teachers who share responsibility for a student's success. So good professional development brings teachers together who collectively say we're going to be responsible for all the students represented by our team. In the next part, on the next slide, there's some other key aspects to this definition. The first is that the learning of the educators is aligned to what the students need to master. The second one is that every educator, and it doesn't matter, I don't mean just teacher, I mean support staff and people who provide extra support to the school by different titles represented in this room, are all members of learning teams. And here's what's key, that the learning that occurs among these educators within these teams is facilitated by someone who knows how to make sure that the time is spent in a productive manner, so that we learn how to change our practice, we improve our practice, and then we are able to assess our results. So it's led by skilled facilitators. Hopefully, teacher leaders who rise to the position of saying, I'm going to facilitate this. And it occurs multiple times per week. Now, the next part of the definition, when the team is together, then they go through a regular cycle of improvement. And that cycle of improvement begins with an examination of data. From there, we define the educator learning goals. And from there, we determine how we're going to learn as educators. What is it we need to learn, how we're going to learn it, and some of the most powerful ways to learn are designing student work together, creating classroom-based assessments, maybe inviting a teacher who's had more success than the rest of us to teach us how to teach something, or to go watch that teacher teach something. It might even be a book study. There's lots of ways that we decide how we're going to learn what we recognize we want to learn together in order to improve our instruction. And then the next part of the cycle is that we support each other in the transfer of what we learned in the classroom. We hold each other accountable for trying what we agreed to try as members of the team. We come back and we talk about the results we got with our students. We determine if our students met the standards that we were trying to ensure that they were successful in meeting in terms of the new strategies we tried. We reflect on whether we need to go back and reteach ourselves and reteach our students, or whether, you know what, that was a great series of lessons, the students got it, and let's bank those lessons and let's pull those out next year when we have the next group of students, and let's evaluate whether that set of lessons is what we need to do when we address these standards next year. Now, I also recognize the vast majority of people at this conference aren't teachers, and you serve teachers in schools. You work as partners with teachers, and so there's a place for all of you in the definition as well. And that's been kind of the scary part, because we're so accustomed to selling services or offering programs to schools. Where do we fit? And here's where you fit in the last part of the definition. It says there's definitely a place for you. Your place is to strengthen what happens at the school. Your place is to align what you offer and the way you work with teachers to support what teachers are trying to achieve with their students. So you can't offer something and just invite anybody to come. You really have to know what's happening at the school and match what you have to offer for the needs at the school. So that's some about the definition. And and there's a great resource for you all. It's on our website, and it's down in the right-hand corner of the first page of our website. It's a video. It's about an 8-minute video of a team of teachers going through the cycle. And it pauses, and Joellen Killian, our Deputy Executive Director, points out the different stages of the definition. And I can tell you, every time I share it with a group, they are transformed by this video. I'm surprised by the response to it. And people say, we could do that, or we're doing something like that, but we could do it so much better. And every time I share this definition with teachers, they say, that's the professional development that makes sense. That's what we want. That will make a difference in our lives and the lives of students. So I really hope that you'll take time to consider this definition as a way to help you improve what you're trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve for students in all schools. And I'll pause and...
Yeah, it's a good moment again to involve the audience and others to talk with Stephanie about this. And Terry's got the roving mic.
Okay, I have a question right here, Marty.
Okay, good.
Give us your name and where you're from.
I'm Susan from Clemson University. The new definition put forth by the National Staff Development Council would you say the emphasis to create this improvement in professional development, is that responsibility or weight on the teachers, or is that on the building administrators or master teachers, department heads, whatever you want to call them?
Well, I think the responsibility for planning effective PD belongs to everyone you just mentioned. It almost starts with who recognizes it first, but the planning occurs at the school level, so there's that school leadership team, and then planning for effective PD also occurs at the team level. I think everybody has a responsibility. We have documents, they're called innovation configurations, and they align to the standards, and you can read it about those on the website as well, that say everybody has a role, and it defines the role. So if I'm a teacher, what's my responsibility in relationship to effective PD? If I'm a principal, what's my responsibility? I'm not sure I'm capturing your question, and maybe you have a point of view that you want to share as well.
No, that it's everybody's responsibility.
Okay.
Well, it seems to me that this new definition really fits well with the concept of continuous improvement in the school. And I guess the thought that I had when the question was asked had to do more with the concept of teachers at the center of any school improvement process, certainly aided by administrators, certainly decisions being made by the entire school, but that that more of a self-directed process using all the steps that you've listed, as opposed to the old paradigm or the current paradigm of teachers being done to, so to speak. So I like the definition in that sense, that it really shifts that focus. I think it's equal responsibility, but teachers are really very much at the center of improving things.
That's a great way to respond to it as well. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Should I continue?
I think that we're ready to move on.
Okay, well, there was one more slide that I wanted to share some information with you all. I think this is really important. It's the next slide. At the top of it, one more time, it says standards-based. There you go, okay? We commissioned a study, I think 3 years ago, to find out if a school really took this challenge seriously. If it implemented professional development according to the standards, would it get better results in terms of student learning? And I'm really excited to share with you that the research said yes. So if you're looking for what's the intervening factor, what is it that we can control in order to get better results, we can control professional development. How we plan, deliver, support professional learning for educators produces better results in terms of teacher practice and student learning. And we have an instrument, you can read about it again on the website, and it's right under the standards section that says, here's how we measure whether teachers are experiencing professional learning according to the definition, according to the standards. You can measure it, you can find out what's occurring within a school, and you can plan professional development to improve. You can plan practices that improve the quality of PD. The other really exciting piece of this definition was that of this research was that it was in the report, it stated that there was predictive value in the standards. So what that meant was, if we really get our act together, we decide we're going to improve the quality of our planning, we're going to pay attention to the standards, that we can have pretty good confidence that we're going to be able to improve teacher practice and student learning. And we haven't had that for a long time. And as you know, a lot of people really question, does the evidence exist to suggest that we really need that improved professional development will produce better results? And it does. And you can access this report that's on the slide on the website as well. So we have no excuse for not saying we don't know what works. And the new definition is embedded right there in the standards, and in this report. So hopefully that will be helpful to you. You can waive it at meetings and say, all right, we have evidence, we have research, we need to do better. Okay, so there were, I guess the last thing was to just share with you some potential strategies, some things to think about, no matter what position you hold within the system or outside the system, to think about where you go from here in terms of your role and responsibilities with regard to professional learning. So the first thing I want to recommend is that you write your vision. You let people know what is the vision we have for professional learning, either in our school or in our district, or if you're a program support provider, what's your vision for professional learning? And use the definition to help you do that. If you provide something from outside the school into the school, show how your program meets the current vision. One of my favorite authors, Robert Fritz, suggests that if you really want to make significant change, that you create a compelling vision, then you conduct a ruthless assessment of reality, then you choose 2 or 3 strategies to move you toward that vision. So have you within your school, your organization, establish that vision? Do you know what it is you're going for? And then have you stopped to assess, well, where are we in relationship to that? How much of our time is really spent in productive professional learning? And then what will be the strategies that you'll embrace to help you move closer? So we'll look at this cartoon. It's late. We had to laugh a little. And if we had a powerful professional learning program in place, we wouldn't have to worry about teachers worried about summer vacation before it actually is due to arrive. Then the next piece is use the standards. You'll like this quote I chose up here to tell you why it's important from our distinguished senior fellow who said, "There are no shortcuts to high-quality staff development, and perhaps that is why we have seen so little of it. This work is not easy, but you tell me something that you can do to get whole-scale, better results for teachers and students that doesn't involve professional learning." There is not a single example of a school or a system that has gotten significant results where when they point to what contributed to those results, it wasn't an investment in professional learning. So use the standards. They're your framework. They're your guidebook. And our cartoon is, and then you won't have to worry about this. So the principal wants another look at that diploma. Next, document the impact. You need to be able for yourself to tell people the impact of your professional learning. When people question the investment, you've got to be able to talk about results. And we have lots of resources to help you around that. And so keep in mind that from the beginning, determine what it is you're trying to accomplish, and then determine the plan for collecting the results so that you can have those results in order to ensure that you continue to get the support you need. And there's no cartoon because documenting the impact is no joking matter. Then I want you to re-examine some of your existing paradigms. Okay, I'm just going to say these quickly and you can ask me about them later. Your school schedule, your teaching, the way you assign teachers, your relicensure systems. Do you have individual professional development plans? All of these reside in a current paradigm, the way you organize schools and the way you think about professional learning. We need to shift all of those if we truly want to have more effective PD, and we can continue that conversation. But hopefully that will spur some questions. And then finally, you need to lead by example. We can't suggest to others that they be members of learning teams when we ourselves are not members of learning teams. We can't suggest to others that we don't have time to read and we pile up our journals and our books and we save them for vacation because we don't have the time for professional reading when we expect others to be caught up on the data and the research. The most important statement we make on a daily basis is the way we model our own commitment to professional learning. So I always like to end with this, and one of my favorite authors from Roland Barthes. So we'll pause with a cartoon and a quote. I love this cartoon. Just think, a teacher goes to school and never gets out. We want them to think that. And I know you all have seen the quotes at the end of the slideshow over and over again. They're just some of my favorite quotes. We won't go through all of them. But I was thinking about the important work that this group does at this conference and the focus on dropout prevention. And so many of you work by yourselves in this field or have very few colleagues. And you probably are, in many ways, what Margaret Mead was talking about, those individuals who can change the world. So I'm here to see if there's in some small way that I can help you think about how you're trying to do that.
Well, I think it might be interesting to hear if anybody's had a good experience to share a story that you've done something in your school where you did follow some of these standards and could kind of give us a from the ground level, boots on the ground, whatever, story about did you make a change in your school? And if so, did any of these particular components, were they part of it? If you have that, it would be great if you could share that with the audience here and the audience out there, because I think some of you have had that situation.
Stephanie, I'd like to address that, seeing no hands. I talked to a superintendent last week in a regional state who had some significant gains in his school district, significant gains. And he attributed it to professional development. However, and I'd like you to address this, however, he said, we've changed that. We do not go outside of our district for professional development anymore. It's all handled internally through some of the processes that you described. But just as an overall, as a general thought, what would be your thoughts about not going out or staying in or bringing resources in and et cetera?
Well, I think it has to be a balance. We had Michael Fullen keynote at our conference this year, and he just released one of his new books. He's always got another one coming out. This one was 6 Secrets of Change, and one of the 6 secrets of change was the importance of external voices, external expertise, external opinion, that you can become so insular that you maybe think you are better than you are. And so you have to continue to access the research and the knowledge and the expertise from outside, but you need to be deliberate in how you do that. So, and that you have to balance the resources that you use, that you spend internally versus the resources that you spend externally. When it's planned internally and when the expertise resides within the system, that's wonderful. And that's what you want as the centerpiece of professional learning, but there are times when those experts within the system are going to recognize that they're hitting their own brick wall, and the difference is that they will then make the decision that they need outside help versus somebody else coming to tell them they need outside help. So our experience is that superintendents, principals like to say, we take care of all of it, but if you really go inside, you're going to see that they're still getting some great ideas and suggestions and help from outside as well.
Thank you. We have another question right here.
I'm sorry, I have another question, and I would just appreciate you reflecting on this for me. We have gone to professional learning teams in my school, and we went through a whole series of training steps as to how the team should participate. I did jot down watching the videotape. And so we went through all of that. I have teacher leaders involved. But there are always those few educators that don't want to participate, that don't want to contribute, that don't want to learn, that just are in that place. And so it creates a struggle with their colleagues because their colleagues don't necessarily want to call them on the behavior. And it becomes a struggle because some people would like for me to jump back in and say, everybody will participate, which in my mind doesn't necessarily work. My thought is, to a certain degree, I would like to leave it at the teacher level and let them bring some of that power in and call each other on their own lack of involvement. And I'm wondering, just briefly, what your thought would be on that.
I have lots of thoughts on that one, so let me try a few and we can talk later as well. But one of the things I think that's helpful to groups in terms of the team learning is that you establish your ground rules. And you do that as a faculty, so there is an expectation up front what's going to happen within the teams. And one of the ground rules should be that we will call each other when we're not participating. We'll call on them, okay? The second thing is that I think the principal does have a responsibility to, and the coach, instructional coach, teacher leaders, to visit and check in with learning teams. And if somebody is not contributing, if somebody is making it difficult for other people to learn, then the principal really does have an obligation to pull the person out and have a conversation with them about their responsibility as a teacher. If the other ones can't learn, can't plan the lessons that they want to be able to plan together because of one person, that conversation needs to happen. And it may be bringing a conflict, a facilitator to deal with the conflict just around that within the room, but then everybody's got to be willing to talk about it. A third one is sometimes you just have to wait it out a little while, because a lot of teachers, like you said, have gone through professional development throughout their careers that has had absolutely no impact. And they're kind of this too shall pass mindset. And what we know is what really motivates adults to change, in particular teachers to change, is when they see the impact of their effort on their students. So for the ones who are sitting back and saying, show me, when the other members of the team come in and show them that it has produced results with their students, it's made teaching easier, more exciting, then the other ones may come on board. So I often say, give them time to come on board, but just determine how long you're going to let them wait, how long you're going to wait them out, and then finally make it a requirement.
And I think also that whole atmosphere of continuous improvement needs to be ingrained in the school. Teachers don't need to be fearful either, and I'm not suggesting that that's what is happening in this situation, of looking at data, looking at what student needs are, what information they now have and how well they're doing, and developing new strategies and testing those strategies out. That to me is an important part of professional development, and being able to do that without getting their hands wrapped when they fail. Failure also can be a part of good professional development as long as the end goal is student achievement.
Right. In fact, in that first standard on learning community, one of the examples of a principal's role is to celebrate risk takers, celebrate mistakes. What did we learn from them?
Absolutely.
So that's one of the key responsibilities of principals in building that culture that supports continuous learning.
Another thing of interest, did you have?
No. Fine.
Another thing of interest to me, Stephanie, is how you mentioned 40-some states, I think, so far having adopted the definition. Is your assessment of how that adoption is translating to implementation at the local school level? In other words, are policies changing as a result of that, or is it too early really to tell? And what brought that to mind were the final issues you covered there of scheduling changes and time and all that nitty-gritty stuff that has to occur in order for this definition to really be actualized at the local school level.
You know, unfortunately, I think there are only 5 states that actually require any sort of evaluation of professional development, and only 2 states that try and do it statewide and judge what's happening. So here they adopt them, but they don't ask the question, well, we've adopted the standards to what do we know about whether teachers' professional development aligns with the standards? So we have a lot of work to do in terms of saying, okay, you've adopted them, now are you going to measure, what's happening within your state? And if I can make a plea for help with the definition work, so what we're trying to do is educate legislators about the importance of the definition, and in particular those legislators who serve on the House Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. So if you know your congressman serves we're looking particularly in the House on one bill that's being introduced. And so if you know your congressman serves on that and you would be willing to educate your congressional representative about this definition and why this definition is important, then contact me and we would love to get you involved on the NSDC A team.
Well, it seems to me the timing of all this is perfect because we're all hearing so much now more about improving teacher effectiveness and teacher quality. But okay, that's fine. But how do you do it? Well, I think you're providing us with a framework that is research-based, that it's going to get results if it's adhered to. And so this timing and your preparation in the years prior to now when the demand is going to be high is perfect. So we're really glad to be bringing this to our listeners out there and to our audience here today, Stephanie. Boy, timing is great.
Well, it's my pleasure, and as I say to people all the time, you have lots of things you worry about. Every day, all I worry about is professional development, and I've been worrying about it for 20 years. So it's difficult to collapse all of that in an hour, and if anybody wants to continue the conversation, I'd be more than willing to do that.
Well, it is difficult to collapse in an hour, and our hour is up. And I'd really like to pursue this more. Those of you in the live audience here have access to Stephanie for a while anyway after this broadcast and may want to talk to her further about this. And those in our listening audience can send in emails and inquiries, and we'll get those to her. Certainly check out the resources and the National Staff Development Council website.
And you're going to
Oh, here's the moment.
Absolutely.
We have an address for you. Get your pens ready, everybody. I'll give you a second for this. But I think it's a 3-month free membership, trial membership,
right,
to the National Staff Development Council. So if you write this down and get on the web, this too can be part of your present for coming here today. Okay, here we go. nsdc.org/commerce/taste, as in TASTE, .cfm. So I'll repeat that, nsdc.org/commerce/taste.cfm. And if you go on there, Stephanie, what will they see?
Well, thousands of pages of resources. And the best part is during the 3 months, you get access to all of that free. So you could just download everything you need. And sure, I'd love you to be a member after that. But what's more important to me is that you get the resources and you start thinking about this important work. So take advantage of the 3 months to get
Yeah.
everything you need from the website.
Hey, I'm going to join today. This is great. There was a question, Sam. People did not hear correctly the CFM part. I just got a note. CFM as in Marty, okay? That's the first word that came to mind. What can I say?
Stephanie Hirsh, we would like to thank you, and I'd like to personally thank you for being our guest on this month's program. This is very important work that is being done, and I think really is at the heart of any real change that is going to occur in our schools. You've given us a lot to digest. I hope that our listeners will follow up in their own personal development and read further about this topic. I hope you'll help promote the new definition, and more importantly, begin as you go back or as you react in your listening teams, that you begin to think about how this kind of definition might play out in your own school and what barriers there might be to that playing out that you can work on. So thank you so much for being with us, Steph.
Well, I went on to remind our listeners that the radio webcast, like all our monthly programs, will be archived on our website within the next few hours, and it will be downloadable for your iPod or MP3 players. Eric tells me sometime tomorrow night. So you can go back and listen again and recommend with your friends and colleagues that they listen and use the archive program. Well, actually, I think the archive program will be good to go today, and it's the iTunes program that has to wait till tomorrow. This is besides NPR, iTunes, we just love being associated with all these cool things. But you can subscribe to Solutions and, as I said, listen to it each month again and again. But those resources are fantastic that you provided. Be sure you join before the next couple of days and have that 3 months free. I know I'm going to do it. So anyway, it's a great resource, and we hope you'll continue to listen to us.
And in March, we hope you will join us, and our guest will be Sarah Walzer, who directs the Family Child Home Program. Dropout prevention, as you know, starts early, and this program is in the area of early childhood education. It's a program that I'm very familiar with, having implemented it as a former superintendent in a district in South Carolina, so I can attest to the success of this program personally. But it's well researched and a very interesting program that has to do with verbal interaction between mother and child at ages 3 and 4. So it has a lot to do with brain development and getting kids ready for school.
It's a crucial time, and we're looking forward to having our first program on early childhood, Sam, so certainly tune in next month. This program next month will be Tuesday, March 16th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, so please mark your calendars today and join us again next month when we'll be back in Clemson University in our comfortable, cozy studio, but it's been fun being with all of you here today.
Thanks to all of you for listening and for participating in this live audience. Remember, we know why students are dropping out of school, and with research-based solutions, we can assure that all of our students graduate. Join us next time for more Solutions to the Dropout Crisis.